Don't swing.
Yeah, we better not lean on that.
It's already on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Leo Levine and will be your MC for the evening. The family will be coming in shortly, so at that time I'll announce for everybody to stand. But I just wanted to say at first, if people have cell phones, do make sure they are off. So the family will be coming in shortly.
There's 4 seats over here in the school. Do you want to come over and have a seat? Oh, so you don't have to sit there? Okay.
If you could stand at this time, please.
I think so. Thanks.
You may be seated. Except for a few minor little things along the way, we will follow the program. As one of David's former teachers and coaches, it is indeed an honor to have been asked by Dana and the Morse family to MC this time of celebration, remembering, and paying tribute to the life of David Lawrence Morse. This morning, David was laid to rest at 11 a.m. in the North Kingston Cemetery. So while our hearts are heavy, we now celebrate his life with as much joy as possible, for David was a joyful person. So this evening, the family welcomes you and is deeply appreciative of your outpouring of support yesterday for David's visitation and for this evening. Indeed, since the tragic news broke in the valley and beyond, they are grateful for all the ways you have been there for them during this most difficult time. I first experienced this happy kid from Harmony in 1983 when he came to West Kings. Along the way, I was his teacher and junior high soccer coach. By the time he graduated in 1988, he had grown into a student athlete who had developed the characteristics of quiet, effective leadership. David was blessed with parents who fostered values and qualities that shaped him into an outstanding citizen of the West Kings school community. For the past 8 years, I have been David's neighbor at Southgate Court. I have seen his career blossom, confirmed by client comments and the great respect of staff. From being his former teacher, we moved to being friends. We talked about family, sports, his improving golf game, the future of the Kingston Arena, and of course, will you sponsor the boys in the tournament? He came in all apologetic. Leo, I was in just 4 or 5 weeks ago for Ryland, and now it's Higgins' tournament. I could never say no to David. 4 or 5 years ago, the Valley Credit Union purchased Southgate Court, and I would often call David my landlord. And what a landlord. No matter if we made multiple calls to him in a day, he would come, look after business, have a chat, and share a laugh. From a favorite book of mine, Timeless Passages, an anonymous writer speaks, life is a gift graciously given by mysteries unknown. As all gifts once received, our own attitude determines its true worth and value. David's attitude fashioned a valued and purposeful life, and we are better off for having been in his circle as a family member, a schoolmate, a teammate, a co-worker, a golf partner, in a community organization, or just one of his many friends. For 15 years, Dana McNamara Morse shared through their marriage and family David's life in a manner that only Dana can speak to. And at this time, we'll have Dana come forward and speak to you about her life, her wonderful life with David.
I'm supposed to look up into a crowd when I speak, but I don't think I can do that tonight. David always teased me about my ability to speak without a script, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to do much of that tonight either. When David and I first met 15 years ago, it was a post-Vanier Cup party. And I stood next to him for hours and I had no idea who he was. We had pictures taken that we had developed later, much later, with my best friends who I am privileged to have with me tonight, who have stood by me for days now, done whatever I have required them to do, and have been absolutely fantastic. But they invited him to this party thinking that he was from Newfoundland, which I thought he was for hours. And actually thought Neil Arter was as well, but found out later they were both from the Valley. And not that I ever held that against him, but we laughed about it for years. We ended up going downtown to my apartment with the same group of friends and danced for hours. And David stood on the sidelines and was this huge, 6 foot something, tall, dark, and handsome. And Paul and I laughed for hours, years, days about the same story, because it's amazing how David reconfigured the entire story. Because I saw friends of mine that I hadn't seen for years up on the upper level of my apartment because it had that rail. And I, of course, climbed up over the rail to dance with them. And then when I came back down, I caught a glimpse of this, again, tall, dark, handsome guy that I thought was just perfect. And at the time, I had asked Paula, who was he? And Paula, unbeknownst to me, took it upon herself to go over and tell David that I wanted to dance with him. And he, of course, took it upon himself to come ask me to dance. And from there, we danced that night, and the next night, and the next night. And over the years, he changed that story to the fact that I actually climbed up over the rail to dance with him and told that story over and over. And And Sugarloaf, he even told the whole group of friends from Ottawa that we met down there, the story. And I'm like, you keep reconfiguring the story. I can't even be bothered to correct people anymore, but we'll just let it go, because after 15 years, I'm tired of correcting you. And that's how it began, after months of going back and forth, because at the time I lived in Maine. I lived in Portland, where I met my very good friends who are also here with my, my boys call her half-sister, my guardian child. And for months I went back and forth to Portland meeting this guy who I said I was never going to move back to Canada to date. Little did he know, at that time I had told Suzanne, one of my very closest friends, who we've been friends for, what are we at, 19 years? This was the man I was going to marry. Unfortunately, Suzanne took it upon herself to actually tell David that. He still, I guess not still, but years and years and years, how does it feel to know so early in your life that you were going to marry me? David used to say to me over and over again, "You are so lucky to have met me." How does it feel to be so lucky? You are so lucky we're married. And I used to say to him, and I'm sure so many, the girls in the credit union used to hear me say this all the time. I used to roll my eyes and say, I ask myself every day what I did to deserve this. Now, I must admit, I must have done something really right to deserve 15 years of such perfection. I have two wonderful boys. I had 15 years of a perfect husband. I had a life blessed with 15 years of happiness that some people just never can say they had. I had a husband that did so much in this community. He did so much for my children. Keegan says that, we have all this stuff. David wanted to go back. He built all these trails in the backwoods. He built the snowmobile trails. And we go hiking on them. And Kathy and I snowshoe on them. And Jesus, I know I'm going to get lost on them, because he used to take me back there and say, "Where are you?" I'd say, "I so don't care, because I'm always going to have you to show me where I'm at." I used to ask him to blaze the trails out for me like we had in Maine when we used to hike, and he never did that. So now Kathy's going to actually have to blaze the trails, because I'm going to get so lost back there. But we have so much memory back there because he did so much. And he used to say to Keegan, I don't want any of this stuff. I want to have his goal was to have a cabin built back in the woods so we could sleep back there and have fires and hot chocolate. Well, I so don't want to sleep in the woods. But he put the pool in and the hot tub in because he said that I wanted that and it was going in anyway. So there was just no point in arguing about it. But he did it. And he did it because it keeps the boys in our backyard, and we loved it, and we have such great memories, and it kept him busy doing, Keegan calls them projects, David's projects. There was always a project. boys emulate all of my husband's most wonderful traits. They have fantastic work ethic. One has his looks, and the other has his personality. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I suppose I can because I can't get in trouble in school. But his smart-ass comments. I can't put into words how blessed I feel. And I know this was a horrible tragedy, but I have an exceptional family. I have an absolutely wonderful extended family that goes beyond Morse after Morse after Morse. And I say a sprinkle of refuse in the middle, and a little hairs. And I have friends that have gone beyond what a person would ever expect. I don't know what I would have done when we were at Sugarloaf without the people we had with us, what Paul Carmen did for us, and Emily, why we were down there and to get us back. They have reminded us at every turn, David's humor, his pranks, and there was a lot of those. And this has provided us with the strength and courage to move forward. Not to understand, because right now, I just don't think that's possible. But in time, maybe the pain of all this will be replaced with a simple awe of what my husband was able to accomplish in only his 41 years. I would respectfully ask that tonight we focus on the memory of David, not the night he died. Paul and Emily and our children have endured a crisis. And that's not what we're here to discuss tonight. We don't want to relive it, and we don't want to focus on it. We have done this over and over again, out loud and in our heads. We are here to celebrate David's life, his humor, and how he has touched our lives. And this celebration of life is to try to help us move forward. Thank you.
Before the next speaker comes up, I will share a little story that David and I, kind of, I guess, perhaps in a little bit of a secret way, would talk about, and that is there were just 4 men actually in the 5 businesses that occupy Southgate Court, and well, Ron Richter, a lawyer with Chris Parker, is pretty new to the area. And he's a pretty smart dresser most of the times. He still has to go off to court. I'm still, a little bit of a shirt and tie and throw back to my days in school. But, it was hard to keep up with the fashion statement of David and Chris, because this time of the year, how could you ever mistake David not from the mountain? I mean, he's wearing his plaid shirts this time of the year. But really, the fashion statement is made by our next speaker, Chris Parker, because David and I would, I guess along about November, for a couple of years, we would make a bet on what would be the latest day in which Chris Parker would come to work in shorts. Well, I look out today, January 19th, Mine was 9. And I'm sure it's not really in memory of David, but here comes Chris into work in his shorts. So I wondered if he was going to show up here tonight, in his shorts. But I think David and I soon realized there was no point in betting because it was going to be a year-round event. So whether it's July or January, Chris can be found in his shorts coming to work. But, Chris is again another example of the many people, a young child, an older person, another opportunity for David to touch a life. And I know that from the past few days, having visited Chris, he certainly has been impacted, and I'm sure we'll find out in many positive ways by the life of David. So, Chris, I saw you earlier. If you would come forward, please.
Thank you, Leo. Good evening. I've been asked to say a few words about David Morse. The fact of the matter is, I would have been disappointed if I hadn't been asked to say a few words about David. I really got to know David in 2003 when he came to be the manager at 17 Court of the Valley Credit Union. I think almost immediately we became good friends, and we've continued ever since. There's 20 years of difference in our ages, but I don't think that ever made any difference to either one of us. It just disappeared. We crossed paths on many occasions during the week. Rarely on the weekend. David's weekends were reserved for his family. But we always had something to talk about, much the same as what Leo said. Whether it was business, or whether it was simply everything else, or whether it was joking around, or whether it was competing, we always had the opportunity to do that almost on a daily basis around work. Dave and I competed in golf. That was the only thing I could still do with my 20 years difference. He was a novice golfer, or he started off as a novice golfer, and I had some experience. That's not to say that I had any ability, but I had some experience. And for the first number of years, things were good for me, but I could see that the writing was on the wall, that David's superior athletic abilities were going to eventually take over. He could see my desperation on my face in later years, and I would say this very clearly, he loved every minute of it. But we didn't play golf every day, but when we had the opportunity, it may be in November, it may have been in July, we usually played in the afternoons or something like the afternoons. Dave would always have his cell phone with him. He needed his cell phone because he needed it for work. He needed his cell phone because he needed to communicate with all the volunteer organizations that he quietly and effectively, and I think those were the exact words that Leo used, that he did so well. He never seemed to, at least I don't think, and I know he never expected anything from that. It's just something that he wanted to do. He also needed a cell phone because he simply had to communicate with his family. He was extremely proud of the professional abilities of his wife and her career. He was equally as proud of his children's boys' boys' abilities or athletic abilities, and somehow he and Dana were able to coordinate all that on a day-to-day basis and still play golf, and it was just wonderful to watch. David told me at one time that he wanted his children or his boys to excel or attempt to excel in athletic activities because it would narrow or shorten barriers for them in the future. I thought that was a great idea, and I hope and I know that it's going to work for his children, without question. Dave loved living on the South Mountain. It was just something that suited him. He was there with his extended family. He and I, we often talked about how easy it was to grow up in the valley, 20 years apart, mind you, but just how easy and good it was. Looking at David in the time that I was with him, it just appeared until 2012 that ease and continuity just continued. It's amazing that it can be taken away that quickly, but such is the way it goes, I guess. Dave and I have health problems. Dave and I always used to joke about my health problems. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would be the one standing here talking about Dave. The only consolation that I could bring to that is to say that we're in the gymnasium, and I think this would be Dave's cathedral of choice. Dave was fair and he was positive with everybody. I don't know how better to describe him. Things always seemed better when I was around Dave, and I think everybody else thought the same. Life was just better to be with Dave. I can't put into words how badly I feel for Dana and Kate and Rylan and all Dave's extended family. Dana and Kathy both said to me that Dave held me in quite high regard. I can't think of a greater compliment than to hear those words. Dave, for some reason, after we got together, started calling me Skipper. Now, I never could figure out why he called me Skipper. There may be a deep secret in the Morse family that I'm not aware of. If there is, I don't want to know about it. But it was there, and he would call me Skipper. And I know that when we were playing golf or doing things, but golf particularly, that under strain and under stress, and certainly we're all under strain and stress now, he would say, and I could hear him say it, he would say, "Stiff it up, Skipper." And those words to me, I can hear today, and I'm going to keep those words with me as long as I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. Our next part of the program is to hear from Marley Dieter, better known to us here in the Valley as Marley Gertridge, and accompanied by Roxine Roberts. So, okay, here comes Roxine. Now, you know, this is not really a traditional service, but a wonderful evening of celebration where we'll laugh some, we'll cry some, and we'll share in those great moments in David's life. But, you know, what's this business with Delta Dawn? Well, you know, David wasn't a singer, but he knew how to perhaps, you know, drive the boys a little bit crazy with his singing. So he got to know the words of Delta Dawn. So we're going to hear Marley, you know, give it a mountain performance, please.
That's a tall order. Delta Dawn, what's that flower you have on? Could it be a faded rose from days gone by? And did I hear you say he was meeting you here today to take you to his mansion in the sky? She's 41 and her daddy still calls her baby. All the folks around Brownsville say she's crazy, 'cause she walks around town with a suitcase in her hand, looking for a mysterious dark-haired man. take you in his mansion in the sky. Delta Dawn, what's that flower you have on? Come on, could it be a faded rose from days gone by? And you know I hear you say he wasn't meeting you here today to take you in his mansion in the sky, to take you to his mansion in the sky.
And certainly another slice of David's life. Well, our next speaker is Paul Carmen, and Paul is again one of David's more recent friends in the past 5 years, especially through hockey, having to stay over at David's place. As we all know, David and Dana have a most welcoming home, and so I'm going to call Paul to come up. He's here in the front row, and he really said it all to me tomorrow night. One night this week when he said that, you know, if the shoe were on the other foot, David would be here for me. And so, Paul.
I first met David in a rink about 4 or 5 years ago. My oldest son, Logan, had decided that he wanted to play a higher level of hockey. And we're from Digby, and the option was to come up the valley and try out and be part of that. And I had seen David around the valley before. I'm a little bit older than David, but I played different sports and had lots of friends in the valley as well. And I'd seen him on the soccer field, and had heard about him playing basketball. I actually have some friends that used to play against him. You know, I never forgot that day after meeting David. My dad and I were driving home. My dad met David the same time I did, and he said, you know, that guy is a genuine guy. He gave off that feeling that when he spoke to you that he was just a real person. And you know, when you meet somebody for the first time and you make a connection, you just know that somewhere down the line you're going to get to know them better. David welcomed us to Western Valley, and although Logan didn't make the AAA team that year, he made the AA team. Keegan went on to play the AAA, and no matter where I saw David, he would always say, "Hey, how's it going?" And you know, then the next year we talked on and off at the rinks when we bumped into each other. And next year, Logan ended up playing with Keegan, and it was I'll never forget. It was a Friday night, and we were playing in Kingston, and we had an early game the next morning again in Kingston. And David said, "Are you driving home tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going home." And he said, "Well, why don't you come up to the house? Dan and Rylan were out some other place, going to be home later." He said, "We'll go up and get something to eat. You stay overnight and save driving home." And so he gave me directions quite quickly, sped through it, and I looked at him kind of with a blank look, and he said, "Well, just follow me." So I was following him through Kingston, and David was cruising right along, and anyway, we were getting to the Greenwood intersection, and I see the light almost ready to change. Well, David runs the light. And so I end up sitting there, waiting for the light, thinking David will be stopped over there. So, but he wasn't. So I drove a little further along, and I'm talking to Logan, and I'm trying to play through these directions in my head. So, keep looking for him. I don't find him until halfway up the mountain. There's a set of lights off to the side. he'd stop to wait for me up there. So Logan says to me, stay on his tail the rest of the way. And then when we got to the house in the yard, he was laughing. He said, oh, I was just testing you to see how well you took directions. So I come into his house, and we walk through the door, and he said, oh, I'll make us something to eat, and I'll find you and I something to drink. So I said, okay. And he said, but you got to fix the furnace. The door's over there. You'll find it when you get down there. You know how David liked to delegate to everybody. I mean, he always joked about managing teams, but he also found a lot of people to do a lot of work for him. You know, he loved to wrestle with the boys. I'll never forget those nights and those visits on the sofa. Rylan and Keegan piling on top of him and wrestling around and squeezing them. And next thing you know, Logan would be in the middle of it, and it was 3-on-1, but David always seemed to get the best of him. You know, as I got to know David, I would mention, do you know David Morse? And people would say, yeah, I know Dave. And other people, I would mention his name, and they kind of look at me, and they say, yeah, I played soccer against him. They would say something about he certainly had a competitive spirit. And then they would say, it felt good to get an elbow in the chest or the head, or be run over by him on the way. You know, he always told me stories, lots of stories, and we only had short time together, but he told me all the stories about all the guys. And so many of you, I've heard your names, and it's unfortunate that some of you I've met this weekend for the first time. But sometime I'd like to have a beer with you and share some more stories about David. David and I were basketball players. Played a little bit of organized hockey, but not a whole lot. And all our kids, I have 3 kids that all play hockey now. So it's amazing how things how they end up with playing different sports. And my son Logan kind of got passed down the Morse line as he played with different members of the family. I never know which house he was going to end up staying at, and I know it was always kind of a joke. There was one night, Keegan and Logan were playing in Canning, and Rylan was playing in Kentville, and the boys always had to be there an hour before the game started. Rylan's game had started earlier. And so I was there at the rink with David, and David said, let's go to Kentville, watch some of Rylan's game before the other game. It was snowing, the roads were miserable. So I jumped in with him. Well, I've never seen so many back roads of going from Canning to Kentville. And he didn't slow down at all. And then on the way back, he took a totally different route, not the same way. And you know, David, a few times I stayed there, he would always he said, oh, I'll show you another shortcut, how to get to Berwick, or back road here, back road there. And he would joke, they're all short ways. And I was thinking, this doesn't seem any short. But what he was really doing was showing me his community and how proud he was to live where he lived. And you know, talk about who lived there and what they did. And I just, those times are something I'll always remember, little jokes. This summer, we always talked about getting together in the summer, but our kids all play soccer, and it's always a nightmare looking at a calendar to try to figure out when we're going to get together. But my phone rang early in the morning one morning. I was on my way to work, and he said, hey, what's going on? I was like, I hadn't heard from him for about a month or so. And he said, what's the weather doing? I said, what do you mean? Well, I said, it's a little drizzly. Well, I'm bringing some guys down to play golf at the Pines. I just wanted to see what the weather was doing. Do you think it's going to clear? And I said, yeah, I think it's going to clear. And I go, is that all you wanted? Yep, talk to you in a few days. You know, David thought of himself as a good singer. And my daughter, Meadow, was asked to sing at a hockey game. Canada, and she has a good voice, and David, he would tease her beforehand. He knew she was going to be singing. He'd say, Meadow, you need some lessons? You should come over for some voice lessons. I'll give you some lessons. So Meadow would kind of look at him, just not know how to take him. But and one afternoon after Christmas this year, Meadow got this new little gadget where you can do all kinds of things on it. But one of the apps was a keyboard, and she was playing Deck the Halls and some different songs. And David came up to her and said, "Let me show you how to play that." And so he hits all the keys. It makes a lot of different noises. And he says to her, "Do you recognize that?" And she said, "No, not really." "Well, let me play it again." So he played it. It was different keys again. And then he says, "You don't recognize that song? It's on the radio quite a bit now." And she's like, "No." And he says, "I'm sexy and I know it." You know, David's love of the outdoors, he talked about the trails and all the things and working them and taking vacation time to work in the woods. And, you know, I have a lot in common with David. I grew up working in the woods and grew up on a small farm and my grandfather's farm. And you know, you start to realize that you're so connected. But he was especially proud of the Harmony Trail that he cut out. And I know just before we left, somebody dropped, one of his friends had dropped some signs off to be posted on that trail. And he was teasing me about, "Well, when you get back, you got to come help me, and I'll show you the trail." You know, we were having such a great time in Sherville. We had such an awesome week. And you know, raising boys in a family, going up on those lifts, you have time to talk with each other. And you start to realize that a lot of the problems you have raising kids are your friends having the same problems. And we had a lot of laughs. We kidded about it. And you know, David admitted that Keegan was a lot like him in a lot of the things that, some of the problems and issues that the teenage boys that I have with my son too. And anyway, he was very proud of the boys. I just want to share, even near the end, I was with David until they put him in the ambulance and with Dana. And I wasn't with him during the accident. I was behind him and I found him. But there's a part that I just wanted to share with you because it's just how David would keep something lighthearted that was serious. We had to get him, he was down off the trail, about 3 or 4 feet off to one side. We had to make a couple lifts to get him up to the toboggan. And the ski patrol guys were great, really good. And this older guy said to David, I want you to count 1, 2, 3, go, and we'll move you. So we had done this 2 times, getting ready to do the 3rd time, the last time we put him in the toboggan. And he said, just before the guy said, "Are we ready?" And David said, "I'm pretty good at counting to 3, aren't I?" So, I mean, he just said, "I'm going to be all right, don't worry about me." And that's just the kind of guy that David was. You know what I'm going to miss most, though, is walking into a rink and seeing him standing on damn boards, his hands in his pocket, kind of lean back, and everybody that walked by, "Hey, how's it going?" and talk to every kid that goes. It didn't matter how big you were or how old you were, he would talk to everybody. He had a lot of nicknames for the kids. You might have been called Skipper, but my son was called Skippy. And I know a lot of you in this room have nicknames that David called you. Donald Mark, you raised a fine son. And Kevin and Diane, I'm amazed at your daughter. What we've been through and how strong she is. And Keegan and Rylan, you're just so lucky to have a dad like what you had. I mean, I know he's so proud of you, and I'm going to miss him. Thank you.
many examples of, you didn't have to know and be with David for very long before he made a huge impact on your life. Now, the next two speakers this evening have been a part of David's life for a very, very long time, because they were schoolmates and bonded together here at WK, as I like to call the place. And while they have moved on in their careers, live in other parts of the province, they remain close to David. They're very quickly to visit Dana last week. And so I'd like to call on Barry Gorge and Alan Horsborough.
To share some thoughts with David with you today. David and Al's and my friendship began right here, West Kingston Junior High. I'm trying to decide some things to say about David. Al and I thought it would be fitting a way of honoring our friend. We would drive up to West Kings here in Al's Mustang. We sat in the parking lot, had a couple of pops. Kind of felt like we were getting ready for the school dance again. As we reminisced and tried to come up with some words with David and some appropriate stories that we could share. We even did a couple of donuts in the parking lot that he would have been proud of. He loved that his brother Jeff would lend him his Mustang. And that's why we went to the school in Al's Mustang, to remember him in an environment that he loved. There are many stories, of which there are almost none, that I can share with you today. And fond memories for Al, myself, and David in that car. There was more than one rather quick trip across the valley in New Germany to Bridgewater made in that car. Sorry, Jeff. Fast car, sneaky brother. Bad combo for you. It's great for us. David loved to play sports of all kinds, particularly basketball and soccer, and later on he enjoyed golfing with his friends. David was very competitive in everything he did, whether it was on the court, on the field, or playing cards. I can still hear him now, whether it was playing cribbage or on the basketball court, when he blew by you. He always had a smart-ass teasing comment, "Come on, fix that hair." Trust me, in the moment it was gratingly painful, but somehow bizarrely endearing over time. We laughed about the way in which David tried to give everyone nicknames. I'm not sure if he was just really bad with remembering names, or if he thought he knew better what somebody's name should be. These terms of endearment usually ended up being turned back on him as he came to be known by a few different names by his friends in high school. Snoop, Sparky, Joey, Jasper, Skippy, Skipper. The funniest thing, though, is that of all the nicknames that David threw out there, was the fact that only one stuck, and it was on him. And from that day forward, he would ever be known to his friends as Barney. In fact, there's been more than a few people over the years that when Al and I were talking about David, the person had no clue who we were talking about. We had to explain to them, say, no, David is Barney. They really thought his name was Barney. Dana? I'm not sure if you knew or not, but there was always a process of approval that we put the women in our lives that came through our lives to see if we should keep her. The first time I met you was in Halifax, in the apartment down south or Tobin Street, you know, down by the lighthouse. Some people know where that is. I was down from Churro from the weekend, and David had been telling me about this girl that he'd been seeing, and he wanted me to meet her. After eating and hanging out for a while, David was hinting me, saying, well, what do you think? And I could tell by the way he was acting and talking that, oh man, oh buddy, you're in trouble here. He was definitely interested in you. So when he asked the question, well, should I keep her? Or not? As Ron's more responsible as well, if you like her as much as it seems as you do, then yeah, you should. Plus, it's a bonus that she cooked us something other than that stuff you call goulash. And as the years went by and your relationship grew, Al and I were equally blessed to have you become part of our families with David. And what made it strangely satisfying is each time we heard you going back and forth to keep him in line, I've got a bit of a cold here, I'm not sure I'll be able to do this, but when she said, David, in a nice, sharp, crisp voice, we knew he had the girl he loved. Because he actually listened. So it was always a nice little chuckle inside for Al and I whenever you gave him the business, because none of his friends could ever keep him in line. But like any good friends, we really enjoyed watching him squirm a little bit when you did. Keegan and Rylan. I want you to know that your father spoke of you often and was very proud of you. He treasured the time he had with you, be it at home, in the woods, on the toboggan hill, the ski hill, the soccer field, or at the rink. Please continue with your sports. It was something he truly loved. And by the way, we're still coming over to go sledding and play sting pong when we're in the valley. But you're going to have to earn your chance to sting me. No freebies. We're all here today to celebrate David's life and how he lived. There's a big difference between living and existing. David was always a person to live life to the fullest. He shared freely and openly of himself with his family, friends, co-workers, and the community, asking for nothing in return. No matter where I went, who I talked to about David, the feeling was David was real. He genuinely cared. He treated everyone the same. It didn't matter if David, the person, had $1 or $1 million. It didn't matter if you were the best athlete or the worst. He never belittled or thought less of anyone for the things or abilities they may or may not have had. David and I did not get to spend as much time over the last few years as we used to. But it didn't change anything. When we did see each other, it was just like we saw each other the day before. Just picked up where we left off, even if it was months in between. I'll always value the time spent together, the time our families spent together, our boys downstairs, wrecking the basement, just hanging out and catching up on how the kids were doing. Despite the occasional split lip and accidental soaking in ice water, the yearly trips to the toboggan hill on Morse Mountain were something my boys look forward to each year. Living a life that matters is not something that happens by accident. It happens by choice. The choices David made and how he lived his life, the friendship, the integrity, and compassion he demonstrated is what makes him so special and defines the person and man he is. It's clearly shown by everyone here tonight. David mattered to each of us. I was told a few days ago that David was lucky to have friends like you and Al. I didn't say anything at the time, but I thought, well, maybe I guess he was. Just little David in me, my mess was perfect. But Al and I considered ourselves far more fortunate to have had a friend like David. There's a saying that people are given families but get to choose their friends. I was lucky enough to be able to do both. David is my best friend and my brother. In conclusion, I would like to share something with all of you that was shared with me recently. David always said, "Rise and shine" to his boys each morning when waking them up. It was his way of saying, let's get up, have a good day, and make the world a better place to be in today. So I encourage each of you to honor David in this way, to make a difference somehow, somewhere, to someone each and every day. To rise and shine, just like David did. So, until we meet again, David, have a lot of great memories. All your friends and family will miss you. I'll miss you, especially your smart-ass sense of humor, which Al and I promised to help Keegan and Ryla carry on in your honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary and Al, two wonderful young men that were here at West Kings when I was teaching, and you can see how deep the bonds of those high school days and how they've lasted through the years. It was really just a matter of hours when David's passing hit our community that I went into one of the local businesses. And people's thoughts and absolute truth were very close to their minds and hearts. And this business person was very quick to say, you know, my shop would not be open here today if it weren't for David Morse. I went to all the banks, and I got turned down. David found a way to help me, because he believed in me. He saw the good in people, he saw the possibility, and this business is doing quite well. And two others over the past week, similar stories. David had that opportunity within his business to work his utmost to make things work out. And I know the next person to speak gave a wonderful tribute on ATV to David, his family, and that's Mike Ward, the president of the Valley Credit Union. Mike, if you would come forward, please.
Thank you very much. We've heard a lot of wonderful things about Dave tonight, and I never grew up with him. I've only been in the Valley since 1994, and knew him more as a colleague at the credit union. And so I thought tonight we'd share some ideas or some thoughts of things that have taken place since Dave joined us in 1999. And when I was given some thoughts after Leo called me on Tuesday, well, we have 75 staff members, and there's certainly be a lot more to say than what that I can recall. And at the same time, I didn't want to keep everybody here until school resumed either. So I immediately went out to our staff, and particularly the two branches that David worked at, and as manager, and give me some ideas or some things that you recall that took place during your time with him. And so I probably a different twist. I'd like to share some of those with you tonight. I think some of it's so lighthearted, and some of them are actually priceless. But as I mentioned, Dave started with us in 1999 as manager of our Bridgetown branch, and it was very very evident very soon that he wanted to do more. And we've heard about what kind of person he is. And he wanted to be more involved and take on more responsibility. So one day, and we talked about it a few times, so we knew with that attitude he was a really good fit for our company. He clearly mixed in with the staff immediately. And I want to throw in a few of their comments as I go along here. One of the things we found, we've heard about his communication skills and all his sayings. And I think he was barely in the door of the Bridgetown branch. And I think they told me the average height of the staff in there is 5'1". Clearly Dave was taller. First question he asked him, in order to qualify to work in his branch, do you all have to be short? And as he towered over them, he immediately would take turns resting his shoulder or arm on their head. And probably still had to drop it down. I should tell him I'd like to share his jeans someday and show them up to my ears, standing at 5'8". They felt they spoiled Dave every morning because he had been convinced that the first thing they should do is make his hot chocolate for him. We went to Greenwood, the girls didn't want to do that for him at first, but I understand that they have since caught on to that. I thought he was taking on practice for a second career when he was in Bridgetown. One of the gals who shared this story with me. If you're familiar with computers, and we always have little cans of compressed air in order to clean the computers. So if it was running quiet in the office, Dave would grab a can or two, go up behind the girls, give them a shot in the hair with his compressed air, telling them if they look too serious, maybe they should relax a little bit. Anyway, they had to start hiding it because when they did need it, there was not much. I'm not sure it really helped their hair a whole heck of a lot, but anyway. We've heard about Dave's use of nicknames for people, and when I heard the feedback from so many people, from our staff, maybe he'd never met these people. Because everybody was at home, fluffy, bubbles. It just went on and on. And if he was lost for names, then they were all Ethel. As one of our gals had said, Dave had a real passion for learning. When he wasn't hard at work in the office, he was often on course. Doing what he referred to as business development. I think he got that from me. There's always comparisons to who actually was on course more than the other, whether it was Dave or myself. And one of us always straightforward Rogers. First time I had a golf game with Dave, or business development session, he and I and Floyd Rogers were down in Bridgetown. And anybody who's had the thrill of playing golf with Dave knows he's playing heads with hell on the ball. And his tee shots would equal mine and a couple other guys who we had it all together. And after a while, something's going to give him the armor here. Next thing he starts to drive and he's losing. Now they're going over the trees. So now I'm kind of smiling thinking, great, I think I got you. Next thing we're walking up the fairway and you're full board. Out comes the ball over the tallest trees in the golf course, lands on the green, goes up and says, just let it where it was. So I suggested to Floyd that we perhaps better not play for money or we'd go home broke. So I asked him, how do you do that? Play golf like that? And as Chris Barker says, he hasn't been playing that long, but he's a natural athlete, which we all know. And he just gave me that little boy smile that we all know and said, pure talent, boss. That was the first of many games that we enjoyed together. So later on, Dave says to me, he'd been in Bridgetown for a couple of years, and he says, boss, I think I'd like to take on a little bit more in the company here. I said, okay, that's good, you were certain. Not just over his rookie years, I suppose. Most of us were old enough to be as much older brothers. So here's this kid now who's like 29 or 30 years old telling us, you know, he wants to move up. And he used to joke at me and say, someday I'll have your job. And he probably would have, I'm sure. So we were talking about some changes, and he says, I think I'd like to go to Greenwood. I could really do some good stuff up there. So you have to appreciate he's going from perhaps our smallest branch and tell me now he wants to run in 2 years, wants to run our largest branch. And I thought, yeah, maybe you're just reaching out here. I know you're head and shoulders above the rest of us. Maybe you're reaching too far. It wasn't too long later, we made some changes. Suddenly, Greenwood branch manager position was open. Dave's licking his chops. So we acted about it with my senior team. We said, all right, let's give this kid a chance and see what happens. Well, he proved us both right by giving him the position, and he showed us that he clearly could run it. Just this week, another credit union manager said he couldn't believe how much he saw Dave grow and blossom as a manager, and we all saw that as well. Certainly from our staff and the board and everyone who knew him, certainly our customers, they knew him as well. We heard the story already, and we could probably keep you here until next summer talking about those very same stories. David played a very key role. I'm not sure taking that larger branch maybe made him blossom more, but certainly he's a team player. He played just a valuable role in our management team. Just this week, our board chair, Marty, said, you know, we were set on planning session, we did breakout groups, and it seemed like we were kind of getting out someplace. Dave would just make a straight out comment, as we know he would, but brought everybody back in tune. So that's the impact he had. His leadership was starting to show, and you could see him growing within the business, and he's an individual as well. When he got in Greenwood, he picked up right where he left off in Bridgetown with some of the, what I think was special ways of communicating with his staff. His morning greeting never seemed to change. Every morning, he practices affluent French. Comment ça va, très bien. That was it. His only other words to be called head office, every time he picked up the phone, it was either bonjour or hey, what's going on? Well, we know who it was. And again, the girls still kept the same wonderful names. Ethel, Bubble, Curly. I don't think they ever used their real names. So the gals there put some stuff together and talked about their experiences over the last many years with them. Debbie Springer used to say, Dave would come to me and say, Curly need $100 from the slush fund. She knew me and immediately knew he was doing some more business development. And he was probably paying his debt for the early games to Chris Parker. And I hope we got it back, Chris. I said to Chris earlier today, we had quite a chuckle to see Chris and I both in a suit the same day. We heard Chris's shorts. I don't wear shorts to work. Tammy, who worked very closely with him as a loan officer, was referred to as Dave's words of wisdom. He'd often say to her, Tammy's that any way to act. Remember, management training, you have to make me look good. So his coaching skills were good. I always said we're as good as the people around us, so he was gluing into that really, really quickly. During the staff meetings, he always told the girls they had to buy or make treats. So in the morning, or in the evening when he was late in the office, he'd say, I got girls staff meeting tomorrow morning. He was customary late, or forget to show up, but somehow the treats always ended up in his office. They never figured out how he did that, but I guess that was another one of his special secrets. Carla had a great discussion with him on the position in the office when they go to a part-time position. She came to negotiate with Dave, who felt, I think in order to get the real commitment, it has to be a full-time position. So So Carol very abruptly said, well, you get paid full-time salary and you only work part-time. So for once, Dave was speechless. There's a couple I really enjoyed. Dave and Tammy were both responsible for lending opportunities in the branch. We're sitting with a customer. Don't ask me how this evolved. Tammy and the customer both knows Dave's fly was down. So Tammy, not to miss the opportunity, she says, oh, Dave, by the way, Jeff called. Says you left the barn door open when you were doing your chores. He didn't bite, and I guess he figured Jeff was going to look after the barn. He always made sure if Debbie and Jane went to Dr. Brooks' office that they took coffee for a special lady in the office. He thought by doing so, it would score some brownie points with his wife. And I assume it did. We heard what Dave, I mentioned what Dave was hot chocolate. He finally did get the girls' agreement to make it for him. But they couldn't convince him to wash the dishes. He would complain about dirty cups in the sink, and they would later remind him that they were all his. Dave decided that he would get away from the word of business development for his golf game. By now, everybody was catching on to it. So now he decided he was going to see a man and move the dog. We figured he'd probably seen every dog owner in the Annapolis Valley. And I'm not sure if he actually ever bought any. Alicia talked about Dave's technology ability. The fact that she had to show him how to use the microwave each day to heat up his sub for lunch. So he knew a lot of things, but I guess that wasn't one of them. This one I even wrote down, so I would not forget it, to say this is priceless. Carla, who I think sometimes half of her career is pregnant, growing her family. We have a lot of young staff, and so she seemed to go through a lot of people going on maternity leave and so on. Anyway, unfortunately for Carla, she was sitting in her office there, on her chair, of course, and her water broke. On the way out the door, Dave informed her, don't forget to pay for that chair when you come back. We often talked about cost control, but I never thought he'd just go right to that limit. This one is a quote which I think really should be printed. Dave mentioned this. And made it this way. Dave spoke with kids in sports and when they should play with Diana King. He said, why not be at the bottom of the best and be challenged than at the top of the bottom and be bored? Dave was clearly at the top of the top. I'm going to miss him dearly. And we thank him for his contributions to Valley Grade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike, and certainly lots of inside info there from the workplace. Next in the program is a poem written by Kim Leonard. Kim, of course, a teacher both here at West Kings and at Pine Ridge, and friend of the family. And Kim and Reg, of course, had their own tragedy just a few years ago. So she wrote a poem a few days ago, and it's going to be read by Ross Bentley. So Ross will come forward.
poem for David. How do we say goodbye to David Morse? How can we accept that his life has run its course? We know the world is a better place with him in it. Taking him away doesn't make sense, not for 1 minute. In his life, David has done so much good for so many. He never asked for anything in return, not even a penny. That was David, extremely giving and kind to everyone. We can't believe that his work here on earth is done. At the credit union, he earned people's respect and affection, tried to find those who did not like him, their honor. David had countless friends who loved and admired him. They sought after his smile and warmth when things looked dim. David had incredible skills. He was an amazing athlete. He was a valuable team player. His drive couldn't be beat. Ask anyone who has ever had the privilege to play with or against him. They would tell you he was a stand-up guy, and they would truly miss him. Volunteering hours to coaching soccer, basketball, managing hockey, he helped to shape many young people into whom they aspired to be. They looked up to him, appreciated his time and dedication. Even when they lost, he met them with celebration. He was blessed to be part of the most remarkable family. All 4 of Donald and Marg's children built houses in harmony, demonstrating tremendous love and commitment to each other, and that David was an extremely devoted son, uncle, cousin, and brother. Donald and Marg are left with a huge hole in their hearts. Jeff, Diane, and Kathy will miss their special brother as he departs. They will feel his spirit and know he is near, cherishing memories and holding them dear. Like when David was young, he dragged his blanket everywhere. And when the cows had to be brought in, he'd tell Kathy it was her turn, because it wasn't fair. Such an innocent little boy who grew into a big, capable man, the strong, silent type, always willing to lend a hand. A wonderful husband, he loved his wife. He was devoted to Dana, the love of his life. An incredible father, so proud of his boys, Keegan and Ryan, brought him great joy. David's influence on us all will never die. We will never forget him, and we will never stop asking why. Why was he taken when he made this world brighter? How did this happen to him when he was such a fighter? There is some good to come out of this terrible tragedy, the comfort of knowing his tissue donation will help so many. Heaven opened up on that terrible day. The angels rejoice. They now have him there to stay. Rest in peace, David Morse. Husband, father, son, brother, uncle, nephew, cousin, and dear friend.
Thank you so much, Kim and Ross, for delivering. These are a collection mostly from his childhood days, the family have put together. And of course, it's just a small snippet of many things that occurred in David's life, but again, they bring out that humor and the many ways in which he related to family, to friends. The family would like to share these few memories. David was born on Easter Sunday, March 29, 1970. He always said, once Mom had me, she stopped having kids because she had finally got it right. He shares a birthday with his nephew, Merrick, and every time he saw Maureen, he asked her how it felt to be so close to perfection. As we all know, David loved working in the woods even as a child. He could often be seen in a woodpile, loading up his little red wagon with firewood and hauling a load across the road day after day. One of his proudest accomplishments was the corduroy road he built with Jeff and Grampy in the woods so we could hike, snowshoe, snowmobile, and four-wheel. Whenever they went back there, they argued about the dates of when they built it, and he planned to put a plaque in recognition of the achievement. David grew up before Xbox, so building snow forts behind the barn and playing tie-up man with all the kids in Harmony and our cousins from New Brunswick was David's pastimes. High school sports played a large role in David's life. Basketball and soccer were David's claim to fame. Jeff once asked, "Are we going to farm around here or play basketball?" We all know what David's answer was. For those of you who are here from high school, I saw quite a number of his high school friends here this evening. Remember that famous coasting party? I guess that could be enough said on that matter. Jeff remembers waking David and Gary, who spoke tonight, up for chores the next morning. It took them 2 hours to drop 10 bales of hay down the chute. David's mother remembers an Easter weekend with Brendan and David trying to play Pictionary and watching 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. She thought they could star in the movie Dumb and Dumber. Many should remember Jeff's Mustang. Jeff left David at age 17, borrowed his brand new Mustang to go out with his friends. And of course we heard from Gary and Al in particular, and they called them Sunday drives. Bridgewater Exhibition was the summer highlight. I love this. A memorable trip back from the X. Jeff was driving with a full load in the old blue and got a flat tire. He made David get out to help, and David's reply was, "Raining out, don't feel good, flat tire." To this day, when things are not going right, the family quotes, "Raining out, don't feel good, flat tire." When David fell in love with Dana, his life became complete, and they started a new beginning. His outdoor adventures continued with his family as he encouraged Keegan and Rylan to play outside rather than with the Xbox. Mostly everything David built for his family was to encourage their love of the outdoors. However, David's competitive spirit did not prevent him from trying to be king of the Xbox. He often sat down and began playing, only to shoot nothing but birds. And of course, no points for birds. He also loved to talk about his stats in pond hockey. 10 goals, 2 assists, games played 2, players on ice 3. Best pond hockey player in Harmony, population 15. David loved to tease his nieces and nephews about whether they had a boyfriend or girlfriend. He couldn't wait to meet and grill anyone that came into the family. David was the go-to man at work and at home. Whenever anyone could not figure things out, they would say, "Just call David." And Dana and David's door was always open to family and friends, from near and far. David was the fixer for everyone. Jeff mostly talks about the breaker, I hear, but not just the breaker. Work ethic and high standards were values instilled in Keegan and Ryland as toddlers. Perfect practice makes perfect. Quote adopted from Bill Reed. I see here Bill here tonight. Being first in the drill is not most important. Master the perfect technique and then speed will come. Measure twice, cut once, as their carpenter's motto as they built everything in the backyard, because David always had a project. The pool house, the fence, shed, the cleaning inside and out, it never ended. Personal and community pride. Every morning David opened his eyes, and we have the great quote here behind us, "It's time to rise and shine and make a difference." He wanted the boys to make a difference in school and in the lives of others. There was a quote on Keegan's bedroom wall, "We don't remember days, we remember moments." We would encourage you to remember the moments David made a smart remark, a wink, made things a little more logical for you, or when he laughed, as it was often and rather than a tragic accident. I know at Southgate, you'll miss him going by our window, waving, smiling, dropping in, just to say hello, because that was David's way. Today, Pastor Chuck McGuire, the Baptist minister from Harmony, took part, presided over the interning David. He told me just before service tonight, celebration tonight, he said a couple of minutes just before the service started, an F-18 flew over. Boy, David can arrange things, as we all know from his life. So we welcome Pastor Chuck McGuire.
Of all the people who stood up here tonight, I'm the one who knew David the least. I remember 5 years ago coming here, and I believe it was Donald that introduced me to David and Jeff at a church function. And I couldn't remember which was which, but eventually I caught on David was the one that was always smiling. And then I realized, of course, that's because Jeff's a farmer. What's there to smile about these days? As I was being filled in over the last few days about David's life, Mark came across the little booklet that had been given to David when he was 10 years old by his Sunday school teacher, the late in his prime. It was poems about trees, and one of them stood out. Planting a Tree by Catherine Eltman. One day, in answer to a childish plea, my father taught me how to plant a tree. He chose a sapling bare of open shoot, shining in bark, sturdy in trunk and root. With keen eyes wandering from place to place, he sought a friendly and inviting space. A tree must catch the wind and rain and sun, and like small children, must have space to run. He told me this and more as his sharp spade dug deep and wide until a hole was made. Then carefully, with hands well marked by toil, he set the sapling in the moistened soil. Like hard and home that weather storm and blast, a tree, he cautioned, must be set deep and fast. He eased the earth uprooted in high mound, around the tree back to its native ground. Now then, he whispered, patting the last clod, we've done our part. We'll leave the rest to God. So I thought about that poem, about what I knew of David. The first few verses of Psalm 1 came to mind. Blessed is the person who does not follow the advice of wicked people, or take the path of sinners, or join the company of mockers. Rather, he delights in the teachings of the Lord and reflects on his teachings day and night. He is like a tree planted beside streams, a tree that produces fruit in season, and whose leaves will not wither. He succeeds in everything that he does. Would you join me in prayer? Our Father and our God, we come to you in the midst of a noted tragedy to celebrate. To celebrate the life of David Morse. To celebrate the impact that he has had on the world around him. To allow his life to remind us of life. And in ways to remind us of you, because you didn't just author a book about life, you authored life itself. And you long to love us and to teach us what life can and should be. You remind us in your word that the length of a life can never be measured, has its value. You demonstrated the value of every human life in the incarnation that we just celebrated at Christmas. You entered your creation as a human, as Jesus of Nazareth. You were born, lived, died, and were resurrected. You destroyed the power of sin and death. You call each one of us to life in you that is truly life, in which death is only to be a transition. Life is to be lived in relationship to you and in relationship with others. That's its true value. Help us, Father, to cherish life, as in these moments we cherish David's life and carry his memories. Help us to dig up the soil and plant our lives and the influence that we can have on other people to do the good that needs to be done in this broken world. A world so broken that it takes people from this life too soon. Show us where our lives will grow best, as you showed David where his life would grow best. And help us to leave the rest to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much, Chuck. I know we'd spend perhaps a little bit longer than maybe planned, but as we all know, many more could come here and speak about David. Just a couple of things before the last selection, Borrowed Angels. When she finishes singing, the family will go out first into the gymnasium, and is there, and also in here they'll be showing a movie, about 12 to 15 minutes, iMovie of David's life. So once the family gets out, then people can go out, get a tea or coffee or sweet, and you can move back and forth, and it'll be a time to meet and greet and see old friends and share some stories about David. So on behalf, first of all, on behalf of the family, enormous thanks for you being here this evening. Your presence is such a tribute. So from Dana, Ryland, Keegan, Marg and Dawn, Jeff and Josie, Kathy and Jack, and Ann and Scott, parents-in-law Kevin, Diane, McNamara, and Dana's 3 sisters and the extended family. You have added so much to the celebration tonight. And as the old teacher, Raylan and Keegan, I get the last word, I guess, as I always did in class. The other evening when I was talking with Keegan, I didn't share with him a very similar experience in my life, where my dad died when I was 15. And I got some great advice from an uncle. So I'll just share a little bit. It's very, very simple. But I remember my uncle saying, "You're doing a lot of great things now. Continue to work hard in school. Play your sports. Help your mom. Give her lots of hugs. And walk in your father's footsteps." So tomorrow morning, boys, it's rise and shine and make a difference.
They shine a little brighter, they feel a little more They touch your life in ways no one has ever done before. They love a little stronger. They live to give their best. They make our lives so blessed. So why do they go so soon? The ones with souls so beautiful. I heard someone say there must be borrowed angels here in this life. They come along into this world and make this world bright. But they can't stay forever, 'cause they're heaven sent. And sometimes heaven needs them back again. They reach a little deeper. They see what's in your soul. And even when they leave, you know you'll never let them go. The world's a little richer just 'cause they came along. Their love goes on and on. So why do they go so soon? The ones with souls so beautiful. I heard someone say there must be borrowed angels here in this life. They come along into this world and make this world bright. They can't stay forever, 'cause they're heaven sent. And sometimes heaven needs them back again. How else can you explain why they're here to stay and not here to stay? I believe there must be borrowed angels here in this life. They come along into this world and make this world bright. But they can't stay forever, 'cause they're heaven sent. And sometimes heaven needs them back again. Oh, sometimes heaven needs them back again.
You could rise while the family will be led up to the gymnasium.